Welcome to the third episode of Women Just Like You. This week we have an award-winning community organizer and HR program manager on the show, the incredible Tina Cheung. Tina and I met at an Employee Resource Group Leadership Summit in December 2023 and have been able to stay connected and engaged in each other's ERG work. Her career journey today is so inspirational, and when I decided to launch the podcast, I knew I needed to ask Tina to tell her story. Tina is a first-generation Chinese American and was the first in her family to go to college. She started her career in community organizing within San Francisco's Chinatown, and after several years, she connected the dots between community, technology, and diversity, equity, and inclusion work to become a global talent program manager at Visa today. Alongside Tina's 15 years of professional work, she is also heavily involved with volunteer groups in and out of the workplace and sits on the board of several nonprofits. What an honor that Tina agreed to be on the show. Our conversation today talks about the power of sisterhood, building transferable skills through volunteering, shifting your mindset from scarcity to abundance, and using the power of joy to steer career decisions. There is lots of motivation just waiting for you today. So let's buckle up and dive right into it. Tina, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here and learn a little bit about your story.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me, Audrey.
Of course. All right. So to start us off, I would love to know, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up and why?
The first thing that came up was I wanted to be a pharmacist, and I think that was just something I always really enjoyed counting. One of the first toys that I got was this multiplication table that my grandmother bought me from Walgreens. And I like to really enjoy like pressing the buttons. And I'm really, really good at counting and math and whatnot. So that was the first inclination. But I think after I took one class during my college years, I realized that it was not my cup of tea.
Which was it? Was it statistics or algebra or calculus? Which was the class that opened your eyes?
Yeah, I think it was actually nursing class, but
Okay.
it was on pharmaceuticals and on medication. And I thought this is a lot of information, a lot of memory. And I think my brain is just wired a bit differently. I think I can manage, but it's not necessarily what brings me the most joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You want to do what brings you joy. And if counting pills doesn't necessarily bring you joy, then like not the
It's necessary. Someone needs to do it.
someone needs to do it. Yeah, not you. Great. So you wanted to be a pharmacist. You were taking some nursing classes. You obviously aren't doing that today. So could you tell us a little bit about your career path?
Yeah, so I think my career path has been a bit non-traditional. I spent a good formidable amount of years in nonprofit and also affordable housing, community development, and really only the last about 6 years or so in kind of technology and corporate life. So it has been very non-traditional, but I do think that there is some common themes around it, right? In terms of kind of my passion for building community, really just people work, building solidarity, a lot of running initiatives and creating different opportunities to really build on inclusion, diversity work, and people and kind of human centric work and building up programs. So I think across that, throughout my career, I've really seen a lot of those intersections. I'm a little bit less stressed from a financial standpoint on really making ends meet on a nonprofit salary. I really think that some of my best friendships and moments were really in doing community organizing work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is really great because I think a lot of people get, attracted to that work, and they're good people. And so when good people find good people, that, it ends up being friends for a really long time.
No, absolutely. Just a lot of really funny stories too. But I think a lot of the early career work that I've done, really, I see it maybe also in the corporate life, but maybe perhaps more in my employee resource group ERG work versus my day job. But I do think there are a lot of overlapping intersections that really help. I think understanding people and really be able to share their stories is a great facet of my day and non-day job.
Yeah, that's so great. That's so great. So I want to start our conversation off a little bit focused on the first half of your career. You mentioned you kind of have like these two components to your career so far, nonprofits, then we going a little bit corporate. So you spent that first part of your career in San Francisco as a community organizer and a program manager, really working in Chinatown with affordable housing. How did you navigate working with city and government officials and community members as a young woman of color? Like, how did you enter those rooms and those spaces and make change?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting place to be. But what I will say is I never felt that I was alone. A lot of the organizing community work, if you look at kind of at least early career in terms of the folks that are on the ground, it's actually majority women of color and women in
Really?
general
Wow.
that are there. So I never felt that I was alone. I always felt like there was a lot of sisterhood and also solidarity, and a lot of folks that are also kind of navigating through different spaces. And sometimes those spaces have not always been the most inviting to communities of color, but particularly for myself, to being like first gen and first gen professional. Definitely a lot of conversations I've never really had an opportunity to navigate or even been in the same presence of. There were some curved moments around that, but I do think that at the end of the day, kind of being in those spaces, what it really allowed me to learn was kind of how policy was developed and made, who was in the room or not, why are people not in the room, and kind of what are some
Mhm.
opportunities to really build intersectional work and also build grassroots mobility and really help. A lot of passion also comes from seeing that there's so much beauty in the community and so much beauty in people power. To your original question around navigating the space, there are some navigation in terms of kind of what decisions are made and who's making them. But I also think that that time in the community really brought out the opportunity to learn about those processes and programs, and also really develop from the ground up. We really work with some really amazing people. I mean, a lot of us are doing very different types of work now, but there was
Mhm.
also a good portion that really, since their early days, have stepped on into kind of local politics and in the city realm or public service. And I think in my own way also, outside of my day job, I still continue to do that, but just in a different light.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so great to hear about the sisterhood element of, like, you never really felt alone. I never realized that the space was so welcoming, to creating that sisterhood and conducive to creating that environment. Is there a time where you really felt that sisterhood in action while you're in those roles?
Yeah, so I used to do a lot of tenant organizing and affordable housing work. When I think about the campaigns that were the most successful, it's always the ones that were really able to bridge gaps and find moments of opportunity to understand that this is not just a neighborhood, like a Chinatown neighborhood issue or a Tenderloin issue, but it's really one that crosses boundaries. And I think that a lot of the work is really relationship building and also
Mhm.
understanding happens to be take place outside of the day-to-day 9 to 5, so to speak. I think as an organizer and the community worker, there's nearly not a set 9 to 5. Some people do
Yeah.
make it a 9 to 5, but I think that the ones that I've really built the closest relationships with and friendships were really people that were passionate about what they did,
Mhm.
and also have some lived experience around that. We also, I think, share a lot of commonality around kind of navigating some spaces where the people that are grassroots kind of day to day are a lot of women that are holding things up, but they're not all at the top of the helm,
Yeah.
making some really important decisions that really define how things are done, right, and managed, whether it's at the city or county or more national level. So I think being able to find opportunities to build solidarity, but also find windows of opportunity to really champion, right, each other's work, but also in those spaces and for to be present. I think that's also really important. I think from those campaigns, I can think of a few notable ones around tenant organizing where I saw people that were willing to step up. I've been at a lot of different events as well, or different campaigns. I remember an elderly couple case I worked on where I saw different organizers from across town show up in that moment and really an act of civil disobedience, right? So even though it's kind of not exactly what I signed up for per se, right? Or what I thought how it would end up, but I think at that moment, I what I saw was that there's just so much love in community and so much
Mhm.
solidarity, so much great work that's led to this moment, right? In this instance, it was my campaign, but I can think of many other ones where I was in maybe South of Market or in the Mission, other neighborhoods where it wasn't my case or clients, but I saw that it could just be any one of us, right? And I think
Mhm.
when you're able to see that solidarity come into place where it's outside of the normal kind of what people define as day job or just their duties and they check a box. It's really not about checking a box, right? People really have a lot of love. And I feel that there are moments like that also in corporate life, but it takes a little bit more to get it out there because it arguably say like if you're in a nonprofit role, a lot of people are driven there by passion first, right? And they're
Yeah.
not thinking about the paycheck, right? Not to say that people maybe in technology or corporate are not passionate. They could be equally passionate, but I think having a comparable livable salary, living wage definitely helps some of the other things that they're struggling with.
hmm Yeah, I think that is so important to remember too. That like if you love what you do and you're passionate about it, like remember to get compensated for it. And there are certain roles where nonprofits don't necessarily pay as much, but you still get a lot of personal benefit from doing that work. So it's just always playing, at what point does it make sense to make a move or to like double down and say, this is what I'm really passionate about. This is what gives me joy. And as you said at the beginning, pharmacist didn't necessarily give you some joy, but community obviously seems to have given you that. You also mentioned earlier on in our conversation that you're still pretty involved with your community. And actually, you have several active volunteer positions. I would love to hear kind of what impact these volunteer roles have contributed to your career development.
Yeah, so I'm on a couple boards, and I think being in a board leadership role has taught me a few things, particularly around how to understand people and motivations, but also to be able to lead and really think big picture. Right, I am president on one of the oldest women's honor societies in the country, and only the second person, a woman of color, actually to be president
Oh,
in
wow.
its history, which is think we're see 1901, so you can do the math. It's been over a century. And for me, when I first started that, definitely there were moments of time where I don't necessarily put fault in anyone, but I think that there were some expectations that I have to make, so to speak, right? And I think being a person of color and also not the norm of the group also means that maybe there's a little bit more, I'm not sure scrutiny is the right word, but maybe
Mhm.
more view around it, right? And like kind of maybe conversation about kind of what I will or won't do. So what I also learned too is kind of understanding not just motivation and kind of what brings people joy, but also being able to be very organized with my time and being very efficient with my time, and also understand in what conversations do I need to be a part of, or are these things that can be worked on async, right? And that we can come together and for our board meetings, the limited number of ones that we have per year, and everyone is busy. These ladies are incredible. They've done really great things in their career, right, respectively, that I want to make great use of their time. So what that means is I have to be more organized around how I think about how I work, more efficiency. But it also means for a older organization digitizing some things. Literally, I spent a good portion of my presidency during COVID, and a lot of the women are used to like in-person events, especially our elderly ladies, right? And so it was hard. And I remember when the university had reached out to us, is there anything we can do? And we're trying to find people to trial pilot this Zoom training. I'm like, I have the perfect audience for you. You don't need to find. You don't need to go looking all over the university. I have a whole bunch of people that would eagerly want to learn, and this will help us too. So that was a great fun part. What it's really taught me is how to really delegate, understand motivations, think bigger picture. Me as a person, I'm a pretty detailed person, an organized person, and I have high expectations in how I run kind of things, whether it's with my ERG or kind of my nonprofit work. And sometimes I think to myself, like, okay, if I'm going to organize this, this is what I would want. I will be on budget. I will do this and this. I will lower this cost, not over order on food or whatever other things, right? Or make decisions about how to organize the events and programming. But I have to think about this from the standpoint of long continuity, right? Is
Yeah.
that yes, I could do it for now, but is this bigger picture wise? And maybe it will be like more perfect or more to the tune of what I would like. But sometimes it's also learning to let go. And meaning
Mm.
as in like this is the budget. I know and I trust that you can make the decisions. You don't need to come back to me about this. This is the budget. These are the parameters and you can run with it, right? So it's also about letting go. And running with it, sometimes it means, I mean, I remember one time a little bit more I wouldn't say chaos, but just a little bit more novelty to experience through for this one event we had. Be a little bit too much food, right? Over ordering, but at some point people will understand and hopefully recalibrate you, right? And as people pick up different tasks or skill sets, right? So I think it's also about thinking as a leader to how to delegate, how to really train, thinking about big picture continuity, because I will not always be sitting here. In fact, I may be moving on, right? So
Mhm.
thinking about what does that shift look like when I'm not in the picture, it's important. And also I think part of it too is giving grace to, right? That really understand, when I say understand people's motivations too, and what brings them joy is that if there are some, even when I think about ERG work, sometimes I have volunteers that are very passionate about certain things. They're very great at certain things. Are there opportunities to bridge that to allow them to shine and really bring that to the forefront, right? And also align with some of our fun things that we do.
Yeah, it sounds like your nonprofit work and your all these volunteer positions that you have really given you that really 30,000 foot view on like how do you think about an organization? How do you plan for success? People are a glimpse of time. Organizations tend to last a lot longer, and it sounds like this um, these volunteer board roles have really given you that insight into how can I make sure that I'm successful and everyone that comes after me is successful too.
Absolutely. We often sometimes also get these conversations with our kind of investment advisor too, in terms of we do these scholarships, for example, for this group I'm in, and also support a faculty award every year annually to a tenured track woman professor. I remember when the investment advisor said, "Well, what is your runway? Like, what we're going to be around no matter if when I'm not around." They're like, "Well, in that case, then it's okay. You can take some more risks because you're not closing shop tomorrow."
That's great. We love when organizations can stick around and give scholarships for a long time. You know, everyone deserves to get some of those awards. So actually, speaking of awards, I'm going to toot your own horn for you because you are very award winning and I want our listeners to know how incredible you are. Tina, you have been named one of SF Magazine's 37 Soldiers of Social Change. You are a San Francisco Women's History Month honoree by former Mayor Edwin Lee. You've gotten alumni awards from UC Berkeley, and you've also most recently gotten several awards at Visa for your ERG work and exceptional leadership skills. Can we just give you like a round of snaps, round of applause for the incredible work that you've done? So I hope that just like made you smile, maybe made you blush a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I have to say that when you shared kind of the topics here, I saw the section. I'm like, I don't know, is this? I was like, it's not something I would normally do, but I appreciate it. And
Mhm.
so you also did some research on me, so that's cool.
Yeah, you know, I've done my homework. So, you've accomplished all of these things so far in your career. I would love to know how your early work in community organizing, maybe these volunteer positions that we just talked about, how have all of these experiences given you the foundation for success? How have you kind of set yourself up to be in these positions?
Yeah. So I do think that there are still different pockets where I'm still trying to navigate, right?
Mhm.
Corporate landscape and navigate landscapes in general. Just as a first gen, college grad professional, there are kind of things that I don't know what I don't know, right? And I'm constantly discovering. That being said, I do think that throughout my career, I've had a lot of opportunities to really work on programming, campaigns, content, initiatives that are human centered and people centered in general, whether it is kind of for community benefits, social impact, my day job and also non-day job
Mhm.
at work, being able to really think about what that means for building a more inclusive world, right, and building
Mhm.
equity in that process. So in the people team, a lot of the work around kind of thinking about diversity partnership, inclusive hiring, and that talent engagement experience. And then from the standpoint of ERG work, really thinking about, are there moments where we can really build solidarity across our different groups? And sometimes it also means that everyone's at a different place on their journey around that, right? And
Mhm.
also within their group, but also among allies. And it's okay to say that maybe at this time, this is what allyship looks like, or this is what
Mhm.
kind of coming together looks like. But maybe at another time, we can At the end of the day, practicing mindfulness, thinking
Mhm.
about different goals and challenges around different groups. But I think from the different experiences that I've had, really understanding and leading with, I think, empathy, leading with people first, and really understanding that everyone could sometimes have not the most happy day, and that's okay.
Mhm.
Like, I don't take it personally, and just to build and move forward, and also sometimes just reach out and see how people are doing too.
In summary, people first, right? If you don't take care of the people in your life, you know, you can't really do anything. Friendships, relationships, colleagues, managers, people first, right? We are people first.
Energy, we're all human first.
Mhm. So, I would actually love to kind of move into the second portion of your career that you just started talking about, your role in HR as a global program manager. You've really helped bring DEI efforts to the stage. You've taken your ERG work and really incorporated it into the work that you're doing every day in your job, right? Do you set policy and corporate strategy for like different recruiting initiatives? Like, what are some of the things that you do that energize you? We talked earlier about having joy in your work.
Yeah. So, in my day job, I co-manage our employee referral program.
Mhm.
And I also work on a different diversity kind of recruiting talent initiatives and partnerships and kind of manage those. What I find joyful is really when I have opportunities to kind of connect with some of the people that are considering, right, Visa as a employer of choice. Being able to kind of add to their whatever their journey looks like, and really be there for them, whether it is in a more high touch setting, or whether it is building out a more engaged experience, so that people know that it's not bots that are reading your application. There are real humans, and to make a more seamless process as much as possible. From the partnership standpoint, a lot of that work brings a lot of joy for me, because I see myself in a lot of, especially for someone who doesn't have a very cookie cutter experience and non-traditional pathway, to be able to say that we value your experiences and really kind of what the diversity and plethora of skills that you bring, right, and your
Mhm.
journey here, both your professional and lived experiences, and really be able to kind of work with different partners to bring that vision to light, I think is a joy. And for me, being able to kind of share, there was moments in time, especially growing up, where I felt, I think imposter syndrome is always very real.
Yeah.
And I think there's still moments where I do feel it, right? Because as I mentioned, there's still a lot of landscapes I really don't, never been taught how to navigate, right? Just kind of
Mhm.
navigating, so to speak, in
Yeah.
real time. But I think that I used to be a little bit more less about kind of sharing some of these more lived experiences, right? At least earlier, not so much in career, but maybe growing up, right? Because there was a layer of, I'm not sure if embarrassment or shame is really the word, but imposter syndrome is definitely there. And also feeling that maybe, especially I felt that way when I started college, actually,
Mhm.
because I saw a lot of Asian Americans on campus, but I felt that a lot of their experiences were very different from my own.
Mhm. It sounds like, well, first off, thank you so much for sharing that and your experience and talking a little bit about imposter syndrome. Can you tell us about a time that you felt you were really able to make a difference in someone's job? Maybe that is helping them overcome imposter syndrome in the interview process, or if someone's been brought into the company, you've been able to help them make that adjustment or navigate being an only?
So I think some of that work is within, even as an ERG leader, right? I try my best to
Mhm.
mix it up in terms of the type of programming. All the work that we do for ERG aligns with some of our pillars internally, right? Around
Mhm.
how we think about culture and belonging, talent, business impact, also community engagement. What that means is also mixing up different types of activities, programming so that anyone, right, if it's whether it's their first day at the company or maybe then they are joining ERG for the first time after 15 years. I really had someone like that. I saw them and said, I've never seen you at an event. Like, what do you do? How long have you been here? And they said, I just decided, like, I've been here for 15 years. I'm like, oh, wow. So welcome. Like, I
Better late
don't,
than never.
yeah. And I said, oh, what brought you here finally? They're like, well, I saw what was going on and I love to volunteer. And I felt like this is the space where I didn't feel like I was alone. I didn't feel like judged. Like there's a great mix of community here. And that really brought a lot of joy to me.
Yeah.
Or it could just be sometimes some of the offline conversations, right, that I've had with colleagues, maybe that I've met through ERG related, whether it's my specific ERG that I co-lead or other ones that I'm a part of, where people will take a step aside and say, hey, can we talk about X, Y, and Z? And it could
Mhm.
be sometimes maybe people that are colleagues that are earlier on in their career, right, and trying to navigate difficult conversations. It's not to say that I have everything solved, right? This is my wisdom. Sometimes it's about career. Hey, sometimes it's about dating too. I mean, I
Yeah.
a lot about the water cooler conversations.
Yep.
Yes, I would say more or less that being able to impart any part of that journey or just be able to open, kind of listen, talk to people, but really just listen. I think sometimes when people, whether it's coworkers or outside, ask for kind of they are not really asking for a solution. It's more about listening and being able to be empathetic, right? And then if that also allows them to think about us having a more inclusive community in the workplace or outside, then that also brings a lot of joy to me too. Because I sometimes people are just having a rough day and
Mhm.
happy to kind of listen. Sometimes it also means some non-work stuff, but hey,
Yeah.
it's part of it
But
too.
it goes back to people are people first, right? And employees second. And you got to be a person before you can actually show up at your job.
Someone actually said something that was quite inspiring from that point, Audrey. I remember one time, it was an ERG leader from another company, which I won't name. They had mentioned to me about collaboration and wanting to kind of build out something more that is across different ERGs. And they said something to me that we will always be, like in my case Asian, in their case Asian too. We'll always be Asian, identifying Asian American, but we may not always be an employee at X company, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always say the company will move, the ERG leaderships will change across these companies, but there's something that we can never not be Asian. So that
Mm-hmm.
was very thought provoking for me personally.
Mm-hmm.
It also really inspired me to think about kind of bigger picture about how we build a larger movement around that as well.
Mm-hmm. Identity is so important. And I would love to I want to give that person like a round of applause
That was
for
great. I was
saying
like,
it.
wow, this
Yeah.
I was
Like,
impressed.
yeah, it's just that's a really great quote that I'll like highlight in the show notes that like you remember you are first, like people first, yourself first. The jobs can change, the organizations can change, but your identity is who you are and you take that with you no matter what. You mentioned a little bit there about, people will move on, change will happen. I'm curious in your career to date. You've made a couple of different moves within nonprofit and corporate. What are some factors that you've taken into consideration when making job or industry moves?
Yeah. So I will say my move was, I wouldn't say accidental, but it wasn't
Mhm.
necessarily like I was intending on making a move. It just kind of happened some semi organically. There was a moment in time where I was really fascinated by just kind of the intersection around technology and what technology can do. I even enrolled myself in some coding boot camp. But then I soon realized, oh my gosh, I'm not cut out for this. I give props to people who are cut out. I remember I thought to myself, I may be mediocre at best and then it's going to take me a long runway to get to where I need to be with this. And I'm not so sure if this is what I want to spit out every day either. So,
Yeah.
but it did make me think a lot about, well, it's really cool to be able to think about what technology can do and
Hmm.
kind of get a different sense of different pacing. Right? So I remember I had transitioned into a role where it's at a nonprofit that supports a lot of technology companies. That's kind of where the shift start kind of changing, transitioning, so to speak. But it happened semi organically, I would say. It wasn't forced or anything. It just happened that way. One of the things I've learned throughout my career is really having, and I don't think I realized this until kind of more deeper into my career, is how important it is to have supportive people and champions that are managers and core team and leadership that you report up to that are champions of you. I think
Hmm.
that's really, really important in terms of from the career standpoint and thinking about career journey and also opportunities of those that are able to sponsor you as well. That I think
Hmm.
that's something that I'm still trying to navigate myself, right? I don't have it solved, but I do recognize that that is a very important thing. There was a moment in time where when I was looking for work during COVID, I was also impacted too myself, where so many folks came on my LinkedIn and said, "Hey, like I can help you," like these coaches, right? And I thought to myself, there's most of these folks probably really can't help me what I really need help on, right? Having a coach versus a mentor versus a sponsor. Some people say, well, I can, offer mentorships. Like you're not even in the same kind of core industry, right? It's
Yeah.
completely left field. I don't think this is going to work out. And on top
Yeah.
of that, it's like, I don't have funds to pay you at this point.
Like, I've been
uh,
laid off. Give me a break.
I know. The discount, by the way, did not happen either. So that was the end of that conversation. Once
Uh,
they realized, oh, no, no, moving on. There's really being very clear and understanding, kind of maybe identify what you need and also being able to figure out who in your life in those kind of professional settings or maybe informal too as can be a champion for you. I know when I was looking for work the last time around, I think it was interesting that some of the people that you think are like the closest, maybe your friends, may not always be the most helpful. And I say that with a lot of
mhm,
respect for my friends too. But I think sometimes it's not that they don't want to be helpful, but it's more they have a very tunnel vision of what I do or from our friendship, right? And kind of
mhm,
who I am versus really seeing the bigger picture. And sometimes people that are maybe I would say a little bit more removed, not completely removed, right? There is a connection. Maybe you met at an event, or maybe they are a colleague of a friend. They're oftentimes the most helpful because they can just be more objective when they look at your resume, they look at your experiences, and then say,
yeah.
"This is what I think." But I also will say to people out there too, not to take that for verbatim, that your source of your truths, who you are, and you stand by that. And people can say, all the things that they want, but it's also from their lived experiences and not necessarily yours.
Mhm. That's a really good point, especially when, there are a lot of layoffs happening right now and people are, leaning on friends and family and close coworkers for advice. Maybe maybe this is like something for our listeners. Take a beat, take a breath and evaluate, like, is this person going to give me what I need? They're going to give you support like emotionally no matter what, right? Because they care about you, they're your friends or family. Is this someone who can really give me the advice I need, and to get a wide variety of people to kind of weigh in to help?
I think to that note too, for those that are looking for a job and maybe listening to this, right? I think what's I've often found, and this is something that I did not to look for a job, but really, especially when I made a transition, right, from kind of nonprofit setting and technology, I found that I was doing a lot of the work that requires very similar skill sets. The difference
Mhm.
is that the jargon's not there, right? The
Yeah.
verbiage is different, the way of execution that I found it super helpful just to go to events, meet people, connect, and not necessarily because I'm looking for a job or I want something from them, right? But really just to learn. And it's so
Mhm.
lovely just to be a student again, right?
Yeah.
But I will say for those that are looking for a job, those are oftentimes when you go to these events, the speakers are usually there. A lot of these smaller events locally, they're there because they want to be there, right? They're not
Mhm.
not paid to be there, that's for
Yeah.
sure, right? They're just there, and it's definitely not the happy hour or the cheese board either. They're to really just share their drop their gems, and I think that's also the
Mhm.
best time to politely get to know and connect with people. There, I've been to events where it's very sometimes very high level people that you will never be able to access on LinkedIn. You'll never be able to just find them for a referral or connect with them or even maybe even get coffee. But if you're going to show up to their event and listen to them talk for 45 minutes on a panel, they are on their off time. They're not in their office. They actually will stick around and talk to you. Oftentimes they'll connect with you too. And for people who are looking for work, that may be not a bad way to go about things. And if they are going to go on LinkedIn, to be very specific about what they're asking for too, and whether that's possible too.
Hmm. Yeah. I've actually found it really hard to find networking opportunities that are outside of the workplace. Where have you gone to find places
Yeah.
to find other people, whether that's women specifically or people in
Mhm.
your exact industry?
So if it's related to kind of professional stuff, sometimes it's an extension of like the ERG or the work related matters, but
Hmm.
it's also affinity groups and also Eventbrite. I found Eventbrite to be very helpful. You have to kind of toggle around and filter with the words. LinkedIn,
Yeah.
sometimes I like to kind of follow some of the speakers or people who are just very active and not active in a happy way, right? Like this is like very positive vibes, and even though it could be even different industry, but it's like, hey, they have some interesting gems that they drop, and they're active, they're passionate. I want to follow their trail, like I want to be
Mhm.
where they're at, right? Because oftentimes, especially like I love to be in community with people that are just happy and bring joy, right? And also willing to share. And what I've also learned from just kind of whether it's being at events and throughout my career, and I know there's different types, but for me, what I've felt a lot of love from is also when we come from a place of abundance, right?
Mhm.
When we come from a place of abundance, and it's hard also, I will say, for especially for maybe from people especially I grew up with, right, where we had a lot of scarcity in our life and maybe some trauma from scarcity too, to shift the mindset to be thinking about abundance, meaning sharing opportunities, connecting, networking, sharing resources, and building capacity together. It might come off as kind of daunting sometimes, or oh, am I going to lose by giving out more? But actually, giving and losing from that, you're actually getting a lot more from that, right? From that experience. Not to say that you should do it like that, but I think when you're thinking about abundance mindset, I think it helps a lot too.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That just there are so many good nuggets in there. I hope people can like listen and like I just feel so inspired by listening to that of coming at situations from a position of abundance. If you have an abundance of time or energy or skills, like how can you kind of give back to people in your life or community and kind of create that sense of belonging? That's just so
Yeah.
inspiring.
I mean, we met because of our volunteering for
Yeah, we
it,
did.
right? Being in a place to drop gems and to share with others
Mhm.
and build communities. Things happen like that organically.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really glad we got to meet several months ago.
Yeah. We still
Yeah.
need we'll talk offline another time too about this collaboration.
Yes, yes, we will. We will. Okay, so we are coming up towards the end of our conversation today. And this is just a really great segue. You know, you mentioned going in networking and finding people to talk to and if you're looking for a job, opportunities to run into people you might not be able to rub elbows with in any other situation. How are you thinking about like your career and like networking and what this kind of next 5 to 10 years is going to look like for you? How are you thinking about like this next stage of your career?
Yeah, the short answer to this is I don't think I have everything really figured out. I
Mhm.
know it's a lot easier, and this is probably not if my family is listening to this, then they're probably like, it's not a good answer. But I think it's the most organic and genuine answer I have. I feel like I'm still navigating some things around that, but I will say that I definitely enjoy doing work that uplifts communities, that uplift people.
Hmm.
How for impact, right? Be able to leverage different capacities and resources to bring about systemic change, to really community benefit and people good for people, right, in general. So I think
Hmm.
along those themes and maybe in a more kind of progressive leadership role sparks joy and brings and where I feel that I'm very passionate about. How that looks like, kind of the bolts and nuts of that, I'm not sure, right?
Yeah.
I definitely would love to be able to continue to integrate that love for people and people centric work and initiatives into my, whether it's my day job or my career, and also maybe the fun job stuff too.
Yeah. I know you're currently getting a certificate in social impact strategy, right? Do you think that's going to play into whatever you end up doing next?
Wow, you really, you really made
I've
my
done my
answer.
homework.
Oh my gosh. So I will say, I will say, so I started that earlier this year, and at UPenn, and so it's been really inspiring to kind of just connect with others who maybe have big ideas and but not sure how to navigate some of those ideas, or maybe even they're currently in a nonprofit, or they're currently in some type of social impact related work. It could be on the profit side, or kind of B Corp, right? But at the end of the day, being able to feel that there's this cohort and community, and I'll get a chance to meet them soon too, so I'm really excited about that in real life,
Oh.
because I think that's where the real magic happens, not on the
Hmm.
internet. That program will allow me to have better kind of, I want to say, tools and framework, I will say, to think about some of the work that I'm already doing, whether it's in my day job or in my the nonprofit board
Yeah.
work or volunteer work, ERG work, to think about, okay, instead of thinking about maybe secular events or programs, how do I think about a broader vision of where I want to take this, right? A
Hmm.
bigger, broader vision, and how does it grow and scale beyond me? So I think it's been interesting to think into, and I'm very academically prone. I love reading. I love school in general, right? I love academia and academics in general. So I feel that in that space, I'm really enjoying being that student, right? As part of the other things that is going on with my life. But I really appreciate that, having some more readings, framework to think about how I'm doing the work that I'm doing, right? And to think bigger and better.
Hmm. Is that what piece of advice would you give to women who are potentially thinking of going back and getting additional qualifications, whether that's another like actual degree, if it's a certificate, if it's like you mentioned taking a coding class, maybe not doing so well in it? What advice would you give to women who are thinking about getting another sort of qualification?
Yeah. Well, I think number one is, and people always ask, like, I don't, they always ask, like, well, I want to do this and that. And I said, hey, if it's not, yeah, think about sustainability too, at least. That's me practically speaking. So
Hmm.
I would say if you work for a company that has educational benefits, so myself included, leverage those, right? Because that is part of your perks. I know if there's some paperwork trail that you have to do, you have to turn in your grades sometimes or whatnot, but it's worth it, right? Because essentially, this is part of your benefits package to grow you and do you,
Hmm.
right? Leverage those professional development dollars if you can. Now, if you can't, I will say try to identify any way possible to get discounts or ways to make it work for you, right? For me personally, I always try to find ways so that I can lower the costs and open more opportunities for myself for that, right? So that
Hmm.
could be maybe filling out a scholarship application or whatnot. I would say weigh it out, right? Sometimes if people are thinking about a complete career change, that's a real change, right? It
Yeah.
could be scary sometimes. But I also think that with that fear and also kind of scariness also comes moments of opportunity and
Hmm.
moments discovering things that you may not know about yourself. It may not always come out exactly what you intend it to be, but I think part of the discovery and the journey for that, like I've been in, in a position before or a situation where I've left work, not having a job, and that I'm also okay with that. I learned a
Hmm.
lot about myself in those few months, right, of discovery, and took on some really random side jobs. I even worked in a Christmas tree factory for 2 weeks. I learned a lot. Those 2 weeks were very interesting because I worked alongside a lot of the day laborers from the vineyards, actually, and about a lot about their life too. But I also learned how to string ornaments together, so that was interesting. But life lessons, real life lessons, right? But really, I would say for people listening, take the time to self-discovery. Depending on your financial situation, I would say it may not be wise to go into debt over it, right? But really to make good investment. It's okay to invest in yourself, but to think about it from the perspective of what are some of your goals. Versus, I think when I was younger, right, just kind of going to college and whatnot, there was a little bit more open-endedness around that, right? But I think kind of in career, it's good to think about what this means respective to it. But change is okay too. Knowing it's nice.
That's great advice. I love the story about working in a Christmas tree factory too. I don't think many people can say they've ever done that. So that's a really fun little fun fact. You should do that in your 2 truths and a lie for icebreakers.
Oh my gosh. I did the one about a jellyfish, getting stung by jellyfish, and people actually thought that was a lie, but it was a true.
Okay, well, anyone listening, if you ever do 2 truths and a lie with Tina, you know what her truth would be. All right. To close us out today, Tina, I would love to hear an inspirational quote or favorite saying, anything that would be, that motivation to close our conversation.
I was having a conversation for this program, right? I remember the person said something to me along the lines of, we have so many applicants, right? And they're all so stunning and so amazing. And the way that it was said, I did feel that it was a bit, just the vibe check was just not where I wanted it to be, right?
Yeah.
But I remember they said that to me. It's like, hey, if you don't get in this round into this program, don't take it personally. I'm just seeing so many amazing people. What I did say to them, I said, that's all right, because a no is just not now. It's not a no. And I think they were a bit taken aback that I said that. At least it was not the answer they thought I would say. Maybe I was a little too bold for me, but I really meant, because oftentimes I feel like throughout my life, a lot of people have said no to different things, right? No to an idea, or no to a job, or no to a lot of other things, right? Growing up. But I think it's really important to not take things personally when people say no, because they're also coming from their experiences and their worldview of why they're saying no to you.
Right.
But to not take it personally and to just say, that's okay. It's no today. It doesn't mean it's no tomorrow.
Keep going after it, right?
Keep doing you.
Keep doing you. I love it. Well, Tina, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. This has been such an incredible conversation. I'm so inspired to get more involved in like my community and my nonprofit work, and just hearing about all of the ways that you're incorporating these different facets of your life into your career and how you're thinking about what comes next. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Wow, what a woman. If you liked this episode with Tina, please share this conversation with the fabulous gal pals in your life. Because hearing about the impact that other women have on their community might be just the thing someone else in your life needs to be able to think, if she can do it, so can I. In the show notes, ways to connect with both me, Audrey the Career Woman, and our guest Tina, and a link to sign up for exclusive insights into the making of each episode and monthly career development recommendations. Like, subscribe, rate, and follow so you don't miss a future episode of Women Just Like You. See you next Wednesday for another episode of the podcast, where we'll talk to a woman who is steadily climbing the ranks of hospitality sales, but who took a slight detour to learn about wine during the pandemic. And with that, thank you so much for tuning in this week to our episode with Tina on Women Just Like You. See you on air soon, gals. Bye.